Hey guys, so today we're going to be studying the expansion of the Indian Ocean trade routes. Now, these routes are named the Indian Ocean trade routes because historians are really original with the way they name things. I've told you guys this before. Indian Ocean trade routes. Why? Because they arose in the Indian Ocean. I really think we should win awards for this kind of stuff. But anyway, so these routes began emerging around 350 CE, so towards the end of the Classical Age. But they didn't reach their height until around 1000 CE. And this is, like I said, that is well into the post-classical age and at the height of the Islamic Golden Age. So, past couple days, we've been learning about the expansion of Islam and the creation of this Islamic Caliphate. And so as the Indian Ocean trade routes are expanding, this Islamic Caliphate is experiencing this incredible economic growth. Their culture is thriving, advances in science, and so on. And we'll study that a little bit in the next couple days. In this session, though, like I said, we're going to focus on these trade routes that develop and play a role in all of this. And we're going to focus on these three major questions. So first, why did trade shift from land-based trade in the Classical Age to sea-based trade in the post-Classical Age? What are the monsoons? What do those have to do with all this? And then lastly, what effect did the expansion of Indian Ocean trade have on the cultures of the region? So let's dive in. This first thing that you're seeing is a map of the Silk Roads in the Classical Age. So let's do some quick review here. First, I want to focus on why did these expand in the first place? These Silk Roads. Why did they expand in the first place? And really, this comes down to the fact that in the Classical Age, we have the creation of these empires. These empires helped the expansion, well, and really I'm referring to the Han Dynasty over here, and then the Roman Empire on this side. And the expansion of these empires really helps out for a couple reasons. First of all, it has to do with the elites. So these upper-class people in both empires, especially Rome, desired luxury goods to separate themselves from the masses. So they're basically sitting there back in their hometowns being like, oh my gosh, look at the awesome clothes I have, I'm better than those guys. I'm going to go away now. Okay. So they're wanting these goods, silks from China, dyed cottons from India, gold jewelry from Rome, whatever it may be, but they're wanting these goods to differentiate themselves from everyone else. So that's part of this. These elites desiring luxury goods. In addition, though, these classical empires, the Han Dynasty, the Roman Empire, there's the Persian Empire in the middle here, these empires built these paved roads. And not just building these paved roads, but they also protected them with soldiers. And so the end result here is that you have people desiring goods that they can get from other parts of the classical world, and they're able to get those goods, silks, gold, whatever it may be, pretty safely because of these, well, safely and quickly because of these roads and the protection that these empires provided. So on the flip side of all this, flip side, opposite, I'm done. Okay, on the flip side of all this, why did the Silk Roads, why did they decline in importance? And not surprisingly, they declined for the opposite reason that they expanded. Collapse of the empires. Can't really see that. There you go. The collapse of the empires. And so basically anything we talked about over here, it's like the opposite on this side. The roads broke down, and that made it harder to distribute trade goods to the different parts of the empire. These roads breaking down. Sounds like Houston. In addition to that, the roads become unsafe because it was these empires who were providing protection along the Roman roads over here, throughout the Han Dynasty and so on. When those empires collapse, they can't pay anyone to protect the roads. So roads become more dangerous. And that's a big part of this. And then, lastly, I mean, when these empires collapse, the elites who were the ones who were, demanding these luxury items, when the empires collapse, the power structures collapse with them. So these elites are less worried about, showing off to their neighbor, and they're more worried about, how do they provide safety for themselves and their families, things like that. So the elites stop demanding these things, which leads to a decrease in trade as well. Now, in spite of the fact that trade was becoming more dangerous after the collapse of these, classical empires, Rome and China, I guess I can show you guys this map. There's that one. Where's the one I'm looking for? Oh, yeah. So, basically, after the Han Dynasty collapses, after the Roman Empire collapses, there's not this, demand on either side of the routes here for goods to be traded back and forth. But in spite of that fact, some merchants still took the risk and engaged in trade. They just decided to move on to a different area. So why would they do that? Why would they engage? Why would they put themselves through this danger of engaging in this trade? And the answer comes down to the fact that people back then weren't that different from people nowadays. They wanted to make a profit. It's all about the Benjamins. All right? So instead of engaging in trade along the Silk Roads up here, some Indian and Arabian merchants realized that the Indian Ocean itself makes for a great trading route. And so this is for a couple reasons. To show you this, let's just slide up here for a minute and label this guy as the Indian Ocean routes. Right here. Indian Ocean routes. So, a couple reasons why these Indian Ocean trade routes develop. Let's stick with our language here. Why do they expand? The first thing is, while the oceans carry their own inherent risks, like drowning and sharks and so on. I hate sharks. I'm so terrified of them. While the oceans carry their own inherent risks, in reality, you were less likely to be taken by a pirate on the seas than you were to be roughed up by a bandit on the Silk Roads. So if you think about it, it's harder to ambush someone out there in the ocean than it is to just sit there and wait along a trade route while someone walks by. So part of this is the fact that you're less likely to get robbed. And that's a big reason why this sea trade develops throughout the Indian Ocean. Plus, sea trade, at least, before we had, gas-powered engines, things like that, sea trade is faster. And the faster that you can trade, the more money you can make. More money. Continuity throughout history, people are driven by money. In addition to that, India has a long tradition of sea trade. In fact, many Indian goods, back in the classical age, many Indian goods made their way to Rome. So here's India here. They would make their way to Rome up here through the Red Sea, and they had to make a little bit of a land portage there, but end up in the Mediterranean, and then they would sail up through the Mediterranean to Rome. So these Indian merchants have a history of sea trade, so it's not like they're foreign to this. Arabia, too, over here, has its own long history of trade. We've learned that most of these Arabs, most of the people who were living in this area at the time, were nomadic, and nomadic peoples make a lot of money through trade. They don't produce their own stuff, but they're constantly moving. So, it just kind of makes sense for them to become merchants. Furthermore, after 650 CE, this whole area, Arabia, North Africa, over here into Persia, was unified under this Islamic Caliphate. This Islamic Caliphate that wanted to expand trade. I'm actually going to circle this area so you guys can remember that this whole region over here is part of this Islamic Caliphate. And this Islamic Caliphate, like I said, they want to expand trade. In part, this is going to want to expand trade. In part, this is going to increase the empire's wealth. They're not that different from any other empire that existed before. Trade is money. But also in part because this Islamic Caliphate, because it is, an Islamic empire, a big focus for them is the health and the expansion of Islam. And so if they expand trade, it actually makes it easier for people to go on the Hajj. They want to make money for the empire. Also, to help facilitate the Hajj, this pilgrimage to Mecca. Lastly, and most importantly, the Indian Ocean is really unique due to a natural phenomenon known as the monsoons. The monsoons. And these, I'm going to switch back to green. These I'm going to talk about down at the bottom. Monsoons. Really important. So the monsoons in the Indian Ocean are the seasonal winds that blow. And so they change directions each season. In the winter, they blow from south to north. So this southwest monsoons, this is in the winter, they blow from south to north. And then in the summer, the winds switch direction and they start blowing from north down here to the south. So we have summer monsoons and we have winter monsoons. I think I labeled that wrong when I say summer. Sorry about that. Summer monsoons and winter monsoons. And basically, these monsoons vastly reduce the risks in sea travel, because one of the biggest risks in sea travel is getting lost. Getting lost. I think I might run out of time. If it stops recording, I will keep going.